Looks like I made it. So much good surrounding me. I feel like I'm the greatest. Now that all my dreams are reality, I am the best man that I can be. Living the dream with the respect of my community. Living the dream. I have the love of my family. Living the dream. Ain't nobody stopping me from living the dream.
It's the American dream.
Could not make it by myself. Thank you for supporting me, and I'm so grateful for your help. Thank you for believing. I am the best man that I can be. Living the dream with the respect of my community. Living the dream. I have the love of my family. Living the dream. Ain't nobody stopping me from living the dream. I am the best man that I can be. Oh, living the dream with the respect of my community. Living the dream. Hard work, paid off. Oh, and I remember what my mama said. Don't you give up, and you'll be living your dream. Living the dream. Oh, living the dream. I have the love of my living the dream. Ain't nobody stopping me. Oh, from living the dream. I am the American dream, it's me. 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 Yeah. Living the dream. Living the dream.
Do you see your eyes when you look at me? Do you hear your voice when you hear me sing? I know now that we are one. When I'm hurting you, I am hurting me. When I'm loving you, I am loving me. I know now that we are one. 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 There is no separation. We are one. When I'm judging you, I am judging me. When I'm praising you, I am praising me. I know now that we are one. I see God in you, I see God in me. I know now that we are one. 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 There is no separation, 'cause we are one. We come in all different races. We are one. We are one. There is one creator. There is one creator. We are one. With the birds and the trees. We are one with nature. We are one. And we're moving in one vibration. Yes. Whoa. We are one. We are one. Always remember that we are one. We are one. We are one. There is no separation. Now do you see your eyes when you look at me? Now do you hear your voice as you hear me sing? I know now that we are one. There is no separation, 'cause we are one.
Hey, 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 happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Good morning. Good to see y'all. Good to be here with you. Good to just be in the place where we're seeing everybody's comments. Folks are coming in, and then we see you coming in. And we know more people will be coming in as we continue. So let us begin, as we always do, with prayer. And this morning, our prayer champion, Yolanda Elam, will lead us in prayer.
Happy Sacred Sunday, everyone. It feels good to join together in spirit wherever we are. So from this place of togetherness, let us align in breath and turn inward to that sweet and sacred spot where salvation and peace always exist. As I anchor in grace, I know there is only one life, one source, one power, one love. And that this one love is everything. That this love is absolute, as its omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence surrounds and breathes life and vitality into everything that it has hopefully created. I am blessed and touched by the knowing that this vital energy is the very presence of my life. This vital energy is the very presence of each of your lives, as we are uniquely etched and sketched in its likeness, as we are intentionally and specifically designed to be all of who we are as the living presence of God. I know that we are intertwined and inculcated by this holy union of perfect peace, love, joy, wisdom, and all-knowing intelligence that no one and no thing can take away. This love, this presence goes where I go. It goes where you go. It is where we are. And as the Spirit of God is right here, I leave and surrender all worries to the altar of love, to the altar of truth, to the altar of peace, which knows exactly what to do with them, as they are already released, as new patterns of being emerge and more room is fully made for us to step into the truth of who and whose we are. So as I take this in, I pray in confidence and joy, knowing that as a community, we rise in love, we rise in consciousness, we rise in spirit, as we are fired up about what we seek to know, as we embrace and say yes to all that life's growth would ask of us. I pray knowing that the Spirit of God, that the light of spirit and the peace of spirit lives in our heart, and that our hearts are expanded and open and receptive and moved as we are transformed by the renewing of our minds through these teachings and this knowledge. I pray knowing that as we give and receive, the universe wholeheartedly corresponds and gives us exactly what we need as we are lifted in spirits, as we lock into this word, as we load up on all this spiritual wisdom. I pray knowing that Pastor Yolanda and Pastor Greg are God-loved, God-fed, prayed up and gassed up as they confidently guide us through this spiritual journey of knowing. It is absolutely done. And I rejoice in this knowing. I rejoice in gratitude and appreciation for the presence of God, for the love of God, and for all the goodness that is always present at CSC, as our community, as our lives. And so in sweet release, I hand this prayer over to the divine love that already deems it so, as I faithfully know. Amen, Ashe, and so it is.
Amen, Ashe, and so it is. Yes, yes,
So
powerful.
it is. Thank
Powerful,
you,
powerful.
Lavonda.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Beautiful prayer.
Yes. So we have so many things to cover today. Of course, we're going to be getting into Chapter 4, Spiritual Economics. We have some announcements. I also, just at the outset, want to say this in case there's just a technical announcement. There have been some issues with Facebook over the past few days with Livestream because of the new care button, which is awesome, but it's causing some problems with some of the software out there. So if you have any issues with Facebook, or if for some reason the stream stops, go to YouTube. YouTube is working. YouTube is fine, and you shouldn't have any trouble there. But we just want to put that out there and make it known so that everyone is aware, because we're still connected. We're still streaming. All things are well on this end. So let's get into the announcements. There's a couple things. Of course, we're always excited about what's going on at CSC, but there are some important things that we want to share with you all. First and foremost, if you have not dropped into the prayer vibration, you heard Lavonda pray this morning. She will be leading us in prayer at 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., we tap into the vibration of prayer for ourselves individually, for the unfoldment of CSC as a community, and for each and every person that's connected, for our nation and for our world. The information, the number, all of that is in your screen. On the screen, lock it in and make sure you have it. Also, there's a playback number there because we do record the prayer. So the prayer is available 24/7, anytime. And we love excuse me, we love seeing and knowing that so many of you actually tap in and connect in to listen to the prayer at other times throughout the week. So please tap into that. The next thing is that we also are open and available for your prayer requests. As many of you know, if you've been to CSC in person, you know that we have an altar. When you come in, you can leave your worries at the door. And those worries, whatever's on your heart and mind, you get to let go of and release that so you can prepare to receive during service. And those are actually prayed over by our prayer champions and collectively, along with us and all of the prayer champions, we're holding the high watch and knowing the truth with you. So please email your prayer requests in prayerchampions@celebrationsc.org. And remember that when you press send, right, you let it go.
You let it go. It becomes a beautiful ritual in learning how to release and learning how to turn up the dial on your faith.
Yes, 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 yes. Another announcement. It is a new month, which means that the third Sunday of this month, we will have the God Talk. As you all know, we have moved the God Talk online, and so it will be held in using Zoom at 1 p.m. on the third Sunday, May 17th. So if you would like to attend the God Talk, this is our time where you can ask specific questions about what's going on in your life. No question is off limits, and learn how to use metaphysical law and principle to address those things. And specifically, as we are in the midst of this global pandemic, we are using this time to focus on those questions that are related to it. It could be related to your financial situation as a result of the pandemic. It could be related to your own health or the health of a loved one. It could be moving through grief as we are experiencing the transition of so many people that we love and care for.
It could be even the feelings of isolation that you have, and just having someone there to witness and hold space for you as you move through wherever you are, because wherever you are, God is.
Yep. And so you have to be on our mailing list in order to get that information. So in the email that goes out every Friday, this past Friday, the Zoom information is already there. So if you're on the mailing list, check it. Make sure, scroll down to the God Sunday section, God Talk section, and you'll see the Zoom information there. If you're not on our mailing list, we'll be sharing how to get on the mailing list. One of the easiest ways is to go to our website, but we also have a number that you can text, and we'll share that again with you so that you can get on our mailing list.
One more thing for clarification. We do not accept written questions for the God Talk. So emailing them in, that was just that one time, because we, when we first started doing the God Talk, we started out with a God Talk Sunday. But the way it works is you have to be in person to ask your question and have it answered. Emailing it to us, we probably won't see it. And second of all, it's more important because of the format that God Talk originated in. There was no written questions. It was just being there. And if you have a question, bring it and addressing it in the moment.
Absolutely.
So no written, no email questions. Okay.
Right, right. And to that end, the God Talk is a safe and private space. We're not recording this. We're not broadcasting this out. We're not streaming it. And that's why we're using Zoom. So you have to come into the room. You have to have the link. And then we all create that safe space together. Another announcement. It's May, and we want to continue to honor our normal schedule. And so we are always closed on the last, almost the last weekend of the month, Memorial Day weekend. And so we won't have class on that Sunday. That Sunday is May 24th. We won't have class on that Sunday, but we will be sharing, and we still will be streaming something powerful for you. We haven't made a final decision on which way we're going to go, but I promise you, you won't miss us because PY and I are going to be teaching something that will be recorded that will be very beneficial for each and every one of you. But just know, if you're expecting the next week of spiritual economics, we're going to be taking a break. Right, we'll be off that Sunday, and then we'll resume again the next Sunday.
Right.
God counts us all. Now, this is what I'm excited about. What I couldn't wait to get to. As many of you know, we're in the time. It is now 2020, and 2020 is the year for our census. The census happens every 10 years, and so we've been asked as faith leaders to encourage and remind everyone to actually complete the census. We know that God counts us all, but
Yes.
we also want to make sure that our government counts and
Yes.
includes us all. So I want to share this quick video with you. It's a short video just sharing how and why people of faith need to take this seriously, and why we want to make sure that we're all participating. And then we'll talk about how you actually can access and complete the census.
As people of faith, we believe that all people have dignity. That's why we are working hard to ensure all communities know that the 2020 census is just around the corner. Every 10 years, the U.S. government is required to count every person in the country. But some groups have always been undercounted, especially Black and Latino families and young children. And that undercount causes big problems because the census determines how billions of federal dollars will be distributed among our states and communities for the next decade. The census results also determine how political power is distributed. So when everyone in your community is counted, you get the resources and representation you deserve. Here's the deal. The census only happens once a decade. Now is our chance to declare that we are here and we all matter. God counts us all. It's up to us to make sure our government does the same. Participation in the census is confidential, safe, and critical for getting the resources your community deserves. Your community is counting on you. Pledge to take the census.
Yes. God counts us all, right? And so we understand why the census is so important. Also, if we consider what's going on right now in the United States, as we think about healthcare workers and essential services and essential workers, the census is what helps us understand and or supports us in having the funds that are necessary in our cities and our communities so that our essential workers are adequately supported. So how do you access the census? It's very easy. You can do it online. I hope that many of you have already received something in the mail, but you can go to my2020census.gov to complete the census. It doesn't take long. PY and I are going to complete our census today. You can also use this phone number. I want to note that if you do call in, it's a high call volume. You might be waiting a long time. Also, you can complete the census by mail, and that will be mailed out to every household and every home. But ideally, doing it online and going straight to my2020census.gov is really the fastest, easiest way to do it, and it does not take long. It does not take long at all. But again, we want to make sure. We know we're counted. We know that God loves us unconditionally. We're clear about that. And we know that God says all lives matter. And so out of that knowing and out of that consciousness, we want to individually do our part to make sure that everyone is represented and counted. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Beautiful. So in this moment, it is time for meditation, and PY will guide us ever so gently, ever so lovely. In this time of meditation.
Oh, we take ourselves into this present moment because this is where God is. And as we begin a new month, we want to begin a new affirmative thought during our meditative time. And this month I've selected the affirmation and the truth behind that affirmation. I rest in God. Comes from A Course in Miracles, but the idea of resting in God. Last month we talked about the allness that each of us is individually expressed as. And so this month we want to feel that sense of rest. There's so much in terms of our lives right now that we look out in the world and there's so much upheaval and unrest and even uncertainty. But when we bring ourselves to meditation, when we bring ourselves to this connection and to this transcendence, we get to do something very profound that not only benefits us individually, it benefits us all collectively. When we bring ourselves together in meditation, we create a vibration that blankets the earth, that reminds us all on the subconscious level that there is something that we rest in, that there is something that is drawing us towards it, that there is this place within us where love resides, where peace resides, and where ease is generated. And so let's come to this place. Let's allow ourselves to release all the things that we're holding in our minds and in our bodies. And come to this understanding that we not only hear these words, but that we feel these words activated and alive within us. So bring yourself right now to a comfortable seat. a comfortable place, a comfortable sense of knowing, and a comfortable way of experiencing this rest. So let's close our eyes and settle in. As we close the eyes, we signal the body that it's time to let go of the things that have held our attention and to bring ourselves in our awareness to the thing that is connected to each of us. That is this loving presence, this unconditionally loving presence we call God. And out of this presence comes rest. With our eyes closed, this signal that we've given our body begins to seep into every pore, relax every muscle, and fill every ounce of our being with ease. With our eyes closed, we feel something more profound than what we have seen. We witness the unfolding of ease. With our eyes closed, we notice the breath now. Wherever it is, we nudge it or judge it not. We just notice it. And by noticing, we realize that we are alive and connected. By noticing, we realize that this connection can take us deeper into the center. And by allowing the breath to just be, we get to be in the arms of love. Now, become a little bit more active in your awareness of the breath and our collective connection by bringing yourself and your experience together through the breath. Inhale through the low belly now. Inhale. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. Inhale through the low belly again. Inhale. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. Inhale, let that breath draw it up in through the rib cage, expanding the front and the sides and the back of this body. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. Again, stacking the breath, bringing it up, in and up through the rib cage. Open the mouth and release. Expanding the breath now, drawing it in and up through the heart. Opening that channel, that chakra, that love and healing center. Hold it there. As we open, we allow the shoulders to relax down the back. And release. Inhale again, all the way up through. Full breath, expanding our awareness, relaxing our nervous system, holding it there. Open the mouth and release. Few rounds of breath here on your own, breathing in and all the way up, signaling a new reality, new set point, new ever-present moment, and releasing when you're ready. Few rounds on your own. Each one taking you deeper into the center. each one seeking out and connecting to rest. Now let's move that breath and balance the breath throughout the body. Inhale up the right side of the body. Exhale down the left. Inhale up the left. Exhale down the right. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. Realizing that the breath is filling every corner of our being. One more round of this gentle rocking, of this releasing of worry, fear, and doubt. Now bringing it back full front and center, all the way in and up. Holding at the top, closing the lips, exhaling through the nose. I rest in God. In your mind, find that place of ultimate rest. Connect the breath to that place. And let the body follow into that place. And as we prepare for our silent time, if the mind wanders, it's okay. There is no judgment of the thoughts. And when we're ready, we come back to the thought, I rest in God. I leave all my cares and I rest in God. I leave all my doubt and my sadness behind and I rest. As we go into the silence, we allow this sensation of rest to be our anchor and love to be our guide. We will monitor the time. You make your way home now. With our eyes still closed, we gently notice the breath, and we realize that the time we gave ourselves is a very present time. When we close our eyes, we can rest and let the present moment connect us to God, connect us to love. With our eyes closed, we begin to bring the body back online now. Maybe we stretch a little, maybe we breathe a more deep breath. Maybe we wiggle the fingers and the toes. Maybe the shoulders relax a little more and the heart opens even more. From this present place, bring the palms together at heart center and lightly touch thumbs into the sternum, connecting to that heart and healing. Nice and easy, bow the chin towards the fingertip and acknowledge and feel an opening in the back of the neck and spine. Bowing, honoring the time that we gave ourselves and each other, and realizing we can come back to this time whenever we need to rest. And slowly we flutter the eyes open and allow a nice gentle gaze to rest on something in front of us. And from this place we inhale, activating the breath more now. Inhale. Inhale, raise the chin, raise the gaze. It's nice and easy. Namaste.
Yes, yes. Thank you, PY.
You're welcome.
Taking us in as always. In as always. Beautiful. So before we get into class, I want to make sure and just say welcome first to anyone who's joining us for the first time. We are in week 5, and we'll talk about the book that we're studying and how you can tap in and connect in. But if this is your first time, if you are connecting with us, please text this number that you see on the screen. Text welcome. And just the word welcome. We've had a few issues where our folks have sort of texted welcome and then their name or other things. Just the word welcome to 347-472-1078. And when you do that, you'll get a prompt back asking for your information, and you'll be added to the mailing list. We're going to be sharing lots of things related to the class, related to CSC and what's going on. So this is how you stay connected. So I want to make sure that you have that information. So in terms of where we are with class, if this is your first time, we are studying Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth. Please go and get the book as soon as you can. Make sure that you get the book, and if you're an audiobook person and like that, make sure you have both, because there are sections that are completely omitted in the audiobook, and they tend to be sections that we love.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you get that. There's some powerful things that are omitted. Also, as you're studying, we'll continue to say this, that you can send us questions. So as you're reading the chapter, as we move forward in this coming week, you'll be reading chapter 5, which is on gratitude. And if a question comes up or something doesn't make sense to you, or you want clarification or something related to your own life, send that question to truthsunday@celebrationsc.org. Okay, and we'll incorporate that into next week's class.
And even as you reread, because we like you to stay with us and not try to read too far ahead, and even as you reread something, a question comes up, still send it, and we will address it. It doesn't matter if it's directly related to this week or the previous weeks, but if you're rereading and something comes up, send us a question, and we will address it.
Yes, yes. So we did receive 2 questions, actually. I'm going to pull those up in a second here.
And thank you for those that have been sticking with us and sending in their questions. This is fun for us. we feel like we're even more connected than we get to be on Sundays, because if one of us is delivering the message on Sundays, we don't necessarily get the chance to stop and ask a question in the middle of the message. And so it feels really interactive to us, and we hope that you're feeling the same about this experience of the Masterclass. We've been getting a lot of feedback saying that you're enjoying this format, and we're enjoying bringing it to you.
Yes. So let's go to this first question, and there's a lot here. It's really not a specific question, but there was a lot about last week's chapter that sort of brought some things up, and I think the biggest part of this question is about the how, and I'm just going to read a bit of it. It says, so many things from this chapter. We're talking about chapter 3 now, the law of visualization, right? So many things from this chapter speak to me about how to go about changing, but I'm a bit jumbled and mixed up about where to even begin. I recognize the desire to change, but I have trouble imagineering what that looks like without linking it to some past version of myself that I recall not feeling this way about. I'm trying to figure out which statement best demonstrates my challenge. I'll go with this one. There is no way you can get a new image that you can change your life if you begin with self-rejection. You do not change your self-image by rejecting what you are, but by discovering what you are. I think I'm unclear how to cultivate the desire to change the current state of my body by seeking wellness, fitness, and good health, without also rejecting it by recognizing all of the unwanted behaviors and indicators that are outpicturing. I think I'm trying to figure out what discovering what I am really means, how to know the truth that I'm perfect, whole, and complete, and loving myself as I am, without that then becoming permission to therefore not take action to change. And I'm not sure how to uncover what it is in my consciousness that is currently manifesting in this way. I don't even know if there's a question in there, laugh out loud, but I'd appreciate thoughts and insights as always, right? So, right, I get it that this is really a question about the how. And so the first thing to note here is that, and you'll hear me say, I'll probably say it again today, but you've heard me say it many times, the mental work is the work. Right. So the first thing is that when we talk about hows, you mentioned in this, seeking wellness, fitness, and good health, right? There are infinite numbers of wellness programs. There are infinite numbers of fitness programs. There are infinite numbers of weight release programs. They all work, right? Now, of course, some seem to work for some and others seem to work for others. And why is that? Well, it all goes back to consciousness, right? It all goes back to what's the belief system that's back up behind it underneath that thing. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today in terms of faith and belief is going to be supportive there. But I think there's something to tap into when you say here, I think I'm trying to figure out what discovering what I am really means, how to know the truth that I'm perfect, whole, and complete without that then becoming permission to therefore not take action to change. So there's just a radical idea that alone can actually bring the changes that you seek. See, it's interesting. Like when we hear this question, it's like, okay, then we really don't understand what it means to truly know that I am one with God and therefore I am perfect, whole, and complete. And out of that consciousness alone, I can release weight. There's a wonderful experiment, Pam Grout, in E Squared. Do it for a week, right? Weigh yourself at the beginning of the week. And for the rest of the week, everything that you eat, love it, bless it, and call it good and know that it is nourishing your body. And then weigh yourself at the end of the week, right? It's called the Jenny Craig principle is what she calls it, right? See, we don't fully yet understand and appreciate what our minds do in terms of the outpicturing of things. This is, again, why I said so many programs, they all work, right? And they all don't work because it has to do with the person's consciousness.
Right. And you said something very profound. If PG can read it, there is no way you can get a new image that can change your life if you begin with self-rejection.
Right.
And it's important to understand that that's true. There is no way. So what is the you that you're talking about? Is it just the physical, or are you understanding that the you that this thing is speaking about is the allness that you spring out of? And so at your very beginning, at your very core, you started off perfect, whole, and complete. You came out of perfection. You came out of wholeness.
Yeah.
And that's the place, that's the baseline that you begin with. And that knowledge informs what you do.
Right.
That knowledge informs what you do.
Yeah. See, it's interesting. We're taught to change through thinking that there's something wrong with us, right? That's why we're taught to change, right? Negative reinforcement, right? What if you start from the premise of there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm choosing to have a new experience, and there's nothing wrong with me,
Right.
right? Abraham Hicks, talks about it. I think I did a sermon on it. I am where I am. Right. Like that's the first thing we accept right where we are. It's all good. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with me.
Right. There's nothing wrong with me. Now, do I choose to have a different experience of the me that I am? Could that new experience of the me that I am take me into releasing weight or quote unquote getting healthier? What all that those steps are doing is revealing the real you. Right? It's revealing the wholeness that you are. And so you take certain actions in the world to show that to yourself. But if the belief within hasn't been aligned with this knowingness that I spring from the goodness, I spring from the wholeness,
Yes.
right? That's where you got to start.
Yep.
And that will lead you in getting to the how of how I get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I start with this knowingness that whatever my body is showing me, it is a reflection. But where do I come from? The I that is connected to the ultimate I, the I am. I come from the wholeness.
Yep.
I spring forth from the goodness.
Yep.
And so if I'm looking at something and I'm rejecting the physical and thinking that that's all that I am, I will never get there.
Right.
I got to go back to the I amage
Yep.
that we talked about.
Last week. Right. Right. Yeah. So I think more of what we're going to talk about today in terms of faith and belief tie back into that. So, if there's another question, by all means, reach out and follow up. The second question we had was directly related to the chapter that we're getting into today. And there was some backstory, but the specific question I just want to get to. It says, my question is, as a person who instinctively is a doer, occasionally to my own detriment, that's definitely judgment. The concept of a turning on of faith seems different than the idea of allowing a flow of faith. I'd love to hear your input on how these terms relate and or inform each other. So unfortunately, neither one of them really tap into what's really going on in terms of faith. And again, we're going to talk more about faith in the text, right? Turning on faith we can use, but we have to understand the example that Eric Butterworth used, because it's not really turning on. What he's saying is that he uses the example of a light switch, a dimmer, right? So the light is already on, and there's a certain amount of power coming to the light and flowing through the light, right? Giving us an experience of light, but it might be dim. Right. But we can move the rheostat or the dimmer to then allow more light in. So when we talk about allowing, it's not an allowing of faith. It's allowing of good. See, your faith is the mechanism, is that mechanism, that dimmer that you're turning up or down or spinning. I remember my grandmother's house.
Yeah, we had a little
right. So that's right. So your faith, that's what your faith is, right? The light never changed. The electricity never changed. The power never changed. The possibility never changed. The capability never changed. The wattage never changed. But wherever that dial is what's allowing or not allowing the good in. So when we talk about allowing, we're not allowing faith.
Right.
We're using faith.
We're using our faith to access this thing that's already there.
Right. So when you call yourself a doer, and hello, everybody's a doer. Right? We're in an action-oriented society. We do things, right? And so as a doer, that is the doing, right? The doing is making use of your faith. So what's interesting then, though, see, the doers generally only operate externally. And so this is why I said earlier, the mental work is the work. Your doing has nothing to do with manipulating the outside world. Your doing has to do with manipulating or changing your inner consciousness.
so that you move along the stages of spiritual growth and unfoldment.
Absolutely.
So that you move beyond, I have to manipulate, to I am one with it, and then ultimately I am it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's where we're going with this.
Yeah. So let's get into the text.
Yes.
And again, we'll tap back into both of these questions a bit, because I think there's a lot in the text that'll take us in even further. Okay. So again, chapter 4, this is where we are. And this chapter is all about faith and belief. If you can believe, there's so many wonderful things here that Eric Butterworth invites us to talk about and look at and think about. Let's see, where do we start? All things are possible, right? So what does it mean to believe? Faith is not a constant. It means different things to different people. We know that. And this is something that happens over and over, right? Sometimes people will say, I need more faith. No, you don't. Right? Saying I need more faith is like saying I need more muscles, right? When a person just decides that they want to bulk up, right? When a person decides that they want to get stronger, they're not saying I need more muscles. They're saying I want to develop the muscles that I already possess.
Right. They're not going out and buying more, right? They're not going out to the store and getting more muscles.
Right. Right. And so, unfortunately, right, people have all of these different ideas and thoughts about what faith is or isn't. And so we go on to the next highlight. The religion of many persons consists simply in a profession of I believe in God, though they rarely bother to ask themselves what they mean by God.
Yes.
This is why we keep talking about check your God concept. We've been talking about this since the first week when we looked at the introduction and the preface, right? That the fundamental first piece that we have to understand, see, everybody has faith, just like everybody has muscles, right? And everybody is using faith, just like everybody's using their muscles, right? But the issue is, what do they have faith in, or what do we have belief in? And we can say, I believe in God, or I believe God. But the thing about that God has everything to do with whatever your meaning or concept of it is. You've heard me say this. Everybody has, nobody believes in the same God. This is why there are all these different gods. You can't, because the sum total of what you believe is God.
Yes, the sum total.
The sum total of what you believe, that's what God is.
Take that in. Just sit with that for a second. So if you believe that God is unconditional love, then it has to express that way in your life.
Exactly.
If you believe that God is sometimes here and sometimes not, then there's a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of fear when you don't think God is showing up, right? It's important that we understand what our God concept is, what our view of God in and as the universe is for us. If we're individualized expressions of God, then there would be no way that each of us would believe a God the same way. We have different experiences. Right. But this God that we speak of is big enough to hold all of those experiences, understandings.
Because it's responding to us.
Yes.
It's responding to what we believe and what we have faith in. Right? It doesn't argue with you and say, no, I'm not that. No, I'm not judgmental. I'm loving. I'm happy. Right? It doesn't say that. It's like, you think God is mean and angry and judgmental? And so it is.
Absolutely.
Right? You think God would create a, eternal torture for the thing that it created out of love, in love? And so it is. Right? So this is the first point. This is the first piece that's very important. If we're talking about faith and we're talking about belief, what are we actually believing in? What do you even mean by that? And so it's important for us to go back to this concept, this idea. God is not a super person out there to whom we pray and from whom we beg favors. God is a life process by which we live. There is no way you can really begin to understand spiritual economics or to make it work in your life until you are free from the sense of God up there or out there, and on fire with the awareness of the presence. God is the transcendent whole of things of which you are an individualized part. The whole universe of innate substance is centered in you.
Right. And I am centered in it. Like we're not separate from it. That's why we can rest in it. because it's right there wherever we are. And the moment we close our eyes, the moment we let go of that external thing that is bothering us, causing us anxiety, we come back to the truth of us.
Absolutely.
Right? We come back to it. I'm resting in it. It's right where I am. It has to be, because I am one with it, and it is one with me.
And so, we'll keep mentioning different sermons. And last week we streamed out the sermons that we mentioned last week. But Check Your God Concept is a sermon you can go to. God is not a monster is one you can go to. God does not forgive is one you can go to. And Destroying Your Wizards I think we mentioned this weeks ago in the Wizard of Oz, from the Wizard of Oz series, Follow the Yellow Brick Road. Because the Wizard of Oz, or the Wiz, is symbolic for that God concept that most people have. Scary, judgmental, withholding, trembling to ask God for anything, something that you got to beg for. It's time to destroy the wizard, right? And all of us have had or do have wizards, as in the Wizard of Oz, that need to be destroyed.
Absolutely. And we all have this idea that if we unconsciously, if we let go of this, we don't know what God would be. But this is part of the whole journey that we're all on, is discovering what God really is, and discovering where God is and what God is for us. And then living from that, and then getting more insight into what God is and living from that. Yeah.
And so this line, the whole universe of innate substance is centered in you. This note I added, it reminded me of what we talked about, concentrical seeing, right? The common center. So that's the idea. The whole universe of innate substance is centered in you. So we must learn to see concentrically from that common center, see and operate from that place, that the whole universe of substance is right here, right now within me. There's nothing you can do to add or to take away from it. And this centering, as far as God is concerned, is the same in all persons. That leads to the inescapable, thought-shocking conclusion that the universe was no more centered in Jesus than it is in you. Mic drop, take a moment, take a breath.
Because this is the logical conclusion, like, right, if it rested in Jesus, it has to rest in me. It has to.
The universe was no more centered in Jesus, was no more centered in Buddha, was no more centered in Muhammad, was no more centered in this guru, was no more centered in that guru, was no more centered in this avatar, was no more centered in that spiritual teacher, no more centered in PG, no more centered in PY than it is in you. Take all of us off of the pedestals.
Right?
Please.
And if anything, raise yourself up.
Yes.
Right? If you've put any person on a pedestal in terms of their knowledge, their experience, their leadership, then that means that you're looking up at them as opposed to raising yourself up to be at the level that we all are really in this thing. Right? It takes us all a minute to raise ourselves up. This is the self-esteem we're talking about. With a capital S. I'm raising myself up to realize that this same thing that lived and moved and had its being in all of these other master teachers, which they also taught, right? We're the ones that forgot that. I'm raising my self-esteem. I'm raising myself up to know who and what I really am.
Absolutely. And so this section takes us to one of our first words and one of our definitions that I want to make sure we get into today. And that word is faith, right? And there's a very simple definition for faith. A consciousness centered in the universal source. That's what faith is. So when we think about, you can't allow a consciousness centered in universal source. You would have to place your consciousness in and center your consciousness in universal source. So this is a doing, right? This is a doing, right? Now, and there's a term he uses later. He uses the term positive faith later. And I think that's interesting. That qualifier is very important because, see, faith and fear are really the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin, right? Faith is the positive belief in the unknown, right? Fear is the negative belief in the unknown. Right? Both are belief in the unknown. Which are you going to operate in, right? And so many of us have centered our consciousness in universal lack, Many of us have
Yes.
centered our consciousness in universal limitation. Many of us have centered our consciousness in universal doubt, in universal fear, right? But we have the opportunity to center our consciousness in universal source,
Yes.
right? And that's the positive use of faith. Hello, somebody. All right. And so we read here in the text, oh, sorry. Go back. So we read here in the text, he says, this suggests an excellent definition for the word faith. Consciousness centered in the universal source. Religious teachings and teachers have conditioned us to think of faith as a magic catalyst that makes God work for us. In no way does faith make God work, nor does it release some kind of miracle power. Faith simply tunes into and turns on the divine flow that has always been present. So going back to that question, turning on, what is the turning on? It's just like turning the dial, right? So again, thinking about, okay, there's something I must do and I like to do, and I know that I want to do something. I must turn on this dial within myself.
And notice it didn't say go out and buy a dial.
You already have it.
You already have it.
That's good. That's good. Woo. That's good. And so this is where then he goes into that example of the dimmer. But he uses another example, right? He uses the shades. One of the things I love, we have this wall of windows in our apartment, and it allows abundant sunshine. And there's a golden time of day where the sun, literally like the whole apartment gets just hot because there's so much sun that's beaming in. But what's interesting, if we just close the drapes, it's a marked difference, right? And so faith operates the same way. The presence of the sun, the power of the sun,
Yes.
the magnificence of the sun doesn't change, but our experience of it changes whether we have the drapes closed or we allow and open the drapes, right? And so what we're doing just as we allow more sunshine in, and I'm again grateful for the abundant sunshine as we're in the house, all these weeks, I'm so grateful that we just get to have all of this God light coming in, but we have to open the drapes in order to receive that God light. The God light didn't change. The sun didn't change. The power and magnificence of the sun didn't change, but we in our doing opened. Right? So that's even something to think about. We'll read later in the chapter, faith is really about just saying yes, right? That's part of it. But it's also opening. Right? So if the idea of the turning on or the dimmer doesn't work, right? How do I need to open myself? Where do I need to open myself up? I am, 4T's class shout out. I am open and receptive to God's living spirit of truth, right? That's where the reading starts every week. Why is that? Because that's a way of turning on our faith, of making it active, focusing our faith. Because see,
we're not getting more faith, y'all.
Yeah.
We're just going to focus what we have.
Yeah.
And we're always focusing it. That's the thing.
Yes,
we're
yes.
either focusing on the things that bring us joy or into alignment with this way of being and teaching, or we're focusing it on the things that keep us separate, the things that keep us in fear, the things that keep us in doubt. We're always using it.
Yeah.
So it's not even that we got to even learn how to use it. We're just going to become conscious that we're always using it. We got to become conscious. I'm using my faith, and I can tell you I'm using my faith by how the heck I feel. I almost said something else. But how I feel.
Right. And here's the thing, right? Because we hear and we talk so often about turning on faith. Words are limited, right? We're using limited language to try to express and explain the unlimited, right? So it's never fully sufficient. So even when we say turn on, the thing is your faith is already turned on, because what we're talking about here, as we want to use it in a positive way, right? So you can feel in your body. You talked about feeling. You're feeling that thing in your stomach, or you're feeling the what worry, doubt, and fear and being scared feels like. That's what you feel. So you're already using your faith, right? It's just misdirected. So really what we're doing when we talk about turn on faith, really we're saying redirect your faith, right? PY said focus on our faith. That's really what we're doing. Because again, faith is always in operation, just as the law is always in operation. We're believing in something, right? That's why we're out picturing. So
we know we're believing in something by how we feel.
Yes.
So it's not like we're just walking around willy-nilly. I love Abraham. That emotion is the first manifestation of your thoughts.
It's the first manifestation.
It's the first, not the last. It just realized that we have been concentrating, focusing our faith in such a way that we now have a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We now have a demonstration
Mm-hmm.
of our thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
And so don't let anybody tell you, I can teach you how to have more faith. What we can teach you how to do is realize that I can focus your faith.
Mm-hmm.
You can focus your faith.
Yes.
Don't let anybody teach you, I can tell you how to have more.
Mm-mm.
You have all you'll ever have.
Yeah.
But what we can do
Mm-hmm.
is help you realize I'm focusing it in a way that does not serve me
Yes.
or please the God that I know myself to be.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And if you've never heard that before, I just want to make sure you can write that down. I think it was when we went to an Abraham workshop that we heard Abraham say that.
Mm-hmm.
But the feeling is the first manifestation, which is a deep thought as you start to think about the creative process, right? Because so often we're like, oh, I'm looking for the thing to show up. I'm looking for this thing in the external. How do you know where you are in terms of manifesting or demonstrating good? Feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And your feeling is the first manifestation. It's always going to tell you what you're really thinking.
Absolutely. And if that feeling is not in alignment with how you want to feel, no judgment of it. There's no judgment.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that last week. Because then that creates more of the feeling you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I must be focusing my faith in such a way. First of all, that makes me realize I have it because I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I must be focusing my faith in such a way that right now it doesn't feel good to me, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But how else can I focus my faith? How else can I bring myself present?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually when we're focusing our faith in a way that doesn't support our highest good, we're thinking about the past and focusing in on what happened before to us or in our lives, or we're projecting into the future in worry. So my faith is focused even then.
Yep, always.
Right? It's focused in the past or it's focused in the future, but it's never present because in the centeredness that God is, I access that faith, I use that faith, I allow that faith, and I just feel it.
Yep. So
this is good, y'all. Y'all think this is good?
Yes.
We over here sweating.
I know.
It's like, woo!
We see y'all. We see the comments. Everybody's in it. Everybody's in it. So again, this next section is where Butterworth talks about the rheostat in the dining room, and that idea. The turned up rheostat is like a faith centering that opens the way to an experience of affluence. Right? Perhaps this is an oversimplification, but it may help you to understand the principle and process involved. Right? So this is just something to think about. You can be very clear where your dimmer is or where your rheostat is, and so. I need to focus my faith. I need to redirect my faith. I need to center my faith, right? Is what we're always doing. And so here's a powerful passage here that unfortunately was skipped in the audiobook. But Butterworth writes, overzealous teachers and writers talk of the magic of believing and the miracle works of faith. It is understandable. They are excited about the role that faith plays in demonstrating prosperity. However, we must emphasize again, faith deals with law, not caprice. Thinking of magic and miracles may mislead you into dealing with some fortuitous turning of the wheel of fortune. God's substance is an ever-present creative resource that must flow forth when you create the conditions which make the result inevitable. Okay, so there's something here. First, this is just true, right? And we could go so much into this. We talked about miracles already. A miracle is a shift in perception, right? So that all starts in mind, which is that's how we center our faith or redirect our faith or focus our faith. When it comes to magic, none of this is magic. We don't deal in the realm of magic or magical thinking, right? Because we recognize we're dealing with law. Why would we deal with magic when we're dealing with law?
We're dealing with certainty.
Exactly. Certainty. Yes. And so there's something he says here. There's a word that he's used many times. And I wanted to make sure that everybody has the definition for it because he's used it so many times. And I want to make sure everybody knows it. And then we'll talk a little bit about that very short but powerful line. Caprice. What does caprice mean, right? It's given to sudden and unaccountable changes of mood or behavior. Right? So Eric Butterworth says we must emphasize again, faith deals with law, not caprice. Right? And so what he's saying is that God ain't moody.
God ain't moody. As I like to say, God ain't sometimey.
Right?
Right? It's not here one day and gone the next.
Right. So when we understand that, then what it reminded me also in the science of mind, Ernest Holmes writes in The Science of Mind that nothing could bring greater discouragement than to labor under the delusion that God is a being of moods. Nothing could bring, like, why would you work? I mean, y'all know that. Y'all ever dated somebody that was sometime? Huh?
Or moody beyond.
Huh? Beyond the norm?
You're like, you walk in 1 minute and you're like, you don't know whether you should breathe or walk out the door. Right. That's, we've applied that to our understanding or misunderstanding of God. Right. Of course, the Miracles talks about capriciousness, but it relates it back to the ego. Mm-hmm. It relates it back to this separated sense of self. It doesn't talk about it in relationship to God.
Mm-hmm. 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 And so this is the thing. We let go of that, right? We let go of that, right? God is not moody any more than gravity is moody.
Yes.
Right? We would not have been able to send humans into space if these scientific laws were sudden and changeable and you didn't know if you could depend on it. You know, we've been working for 5 years to get this shuttle in space, but, you know, on the date of the launch, we don't know.
Right. Or we have this small window by which we have to operate. Right?
Yeah.
Many times we're living our lives believing, I have to do it within a certain window. I got a time frame. I got a timeline. Mm-hmm. And then we get upset with ourselves if we miss that quote unquote window.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Certainty doesn't operate based on a time frame. It's eternal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hence certainty. Hence always there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you're thinking about your God concept, and it's okay because we recognize, you know, we were all taught, you know, this other way of thinking. Most of us were about God, you know, and so we get to heal that, right? Please don't beat yourself up. Mm-hmm. But this is now your opportunity. It's like, you know what? I do believe that, you know, he may not come when you want him, but he's always on time. Is believing in a God of caprice.
It's a sometimey God. And I think that might be a Southern thing, but that's what we called it in the South. We called it sometimey.
Right. Like all of that. Right. You know, and so these are the things we get to heal. Right. These are the things we get to heal. And I see y'all, everybody's here. You're with us, tapped in. And this is beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so he goes on, don't miss this vital insight. Faith is not a vague process of believing in something, much like a rote learned confession of I believe in God. Mm-hmm. It is rather a positive act of turning on something. The power is already within you, for you are the power being projected into visibility as you. You see, saying that you have faith in something, even faith in God out there, suggests reaching and supplicating, touching a magic button that does not relate to your wholeness at all. Mm-hmm. The ideal is not believing in, but believing from. This is why when we talk about prayer, we say we pray from the answer. I love how Ralph Waldo Emerson puts it. Prayer is contemplation of the facts from the highest point of view.
The highest point of view.
Right? So you don't believe in anything. You believe from. You believe from a knowing that things will work out, from a knowing that you are loved unconditionally, from a knowing that abundance is available, from a knowing that even in the midst of the storm, there is peace in the middle of it, from a knowing.
And then you use your physical sight to focus in on those things that are in alignment with this, from this knowing. Mm-hmm. That's all we're ever doing. Mm-hmm. I have a knowing. I want to practice it in my life. I want to feel it viscerally. I begin to focus my faith in such a way that it points it out to everywhere I go. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so he goes on, you believe with the assumption of the presence in which you live and have being. Your faith is an activity that goes forth from this base. Mm. It is a believing attitude that is made real and creative by reason of your attunement with the creative flow. And so this is then where he goes on in the next piece, and to use that example we just talked about, opening up the drapes, right? The question may be asked, do you really believe that faith can change things? There is a changing process like light streaming into the room when you open the drapes. However, faith doesn't change the nature of reality any more than opening the drapes changes the nature of light. Faith tunes into reality and releases the imprisoned splendor. Do you hear that?
Right. Just by opening the drapes, we haven't decided that the sun has gone down. We're just deciding that we want to access that light that's already there.
Right.
We're not changing the light. I'm not going out there into outer space and doing something. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm just allowing myself to be one and centered on what I desire, where the light is, and what I am.
Right. When you open the curtains, when you open the drapes, when you lift up the blinds, we all have good sense. We know we're not changing the sun.
We're not changing the sun.
You're allowing the sunlight in. And what we're saying from the spiritual, from the metaphysical perspective, just as the sun is always shining, and that's true.
Always.
Even no matter which hemisphere, which side of the earth you're on, although you might not be experiencing the sun, it's still shining. And so just as we know that the sun is always shining, and then we have the opportunity to allow more or less of that light in, so abundance is always flowing. And we have the opportunity to allow more or less of that abundance in. So peace is always flowing, and we have the opportunity to allow more peace in or not. So joy is always flowing, and we have the opportunity to allow more joy in or not. One of the most profound things for me when I'm saying joy and thinking about how we are in this moment as we are all mourning and grieving, as so many of our loved ones have transitioned. But one of the most profound lessons that I've learned in the transition of my loved ones is learning that joy still exists. Yes, I'm sad. Yes, there are tears, but I still can access joy in that moment. It's mind-blowing, except when I can use the example as above, so below, as below, so above. Just as I know that's true of the sun, that I can still access light, right? Just as I know I can access that same thing within my own life, I still have access to joy.
Right, and whether I'm choosing to have that experience of the absence of joy, it's still okay.
Yeah.
Joy is not even going to judge you that whether you have access to it in the moment or not. Because God is not going to judge you whether you have access to the joy or whether you're in the sadness. It's just going to keep on being joy. And then you access it when you are ready.
When you are ready. You are ready.
It's not saying you got a time frame on when. That's why the grieving process is what it is. Right?
Yep.
But when I'm ready, I can access it. When I'm ready, I get to open the shade. And if I'm not, it's still okay.
Yep. I'm just seeing that comment. Yeah, using the power of choice to choose what you want, right? And that's what we get to do. We have this beautiful mechanism. We are choosers. Unfortunately, what happens for so many of us, we don't learn that, right? And so we think that when we're in victim consciousness, we think that you made me feel this way. This person made me do this, right? And we don't understand and recognize that we always have the power of choice. It's one of the gifts of meditation, right? Meditation is what supports us in becoming more aware of, I can choose to act up and act out right now, or I can choose to be quiet.
Right.
I can choose another path.
And we get to practice that awareness of choice moment by moment, right? And if I've chosen something in the previous moment, I can still make a new choice in this moment. Of course, Miracles says choose again. It's one of the most profound things that we get to learn about how unconditionally life is, God is, love is. We get to choose moment by moment by moment. And there is no faulty choice if you get to choose again.
Yep. And so in this next highlight, it's dealing with this very thing. Thus, there is a sense in which faith doesn't really change things at all. It changes the way you relate to them. There is always an all-sufficiency, even within the insufficiency. Your faith can relate to the whole or the partial, and it will be as you believe. And that's what we're doing. See, again, you got to understand, because we're not dealing with magic or magical thinking, right? See, magic is like, poof, I want this thing to, just show up out of nowhere and it's supernatural, right? What we understand is that these laws and this way of being is natural.
It's not supernatural.
Right? And so to that extent, what we're really doing, we're not trying to change things, but we change the way you relate to them, right? I think I quoted Dr. Wayne Dyer last week, right? If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? That's how it works.
That's
right?
law.
That's law. We don't say, thing, please change, alakazam, right? That's not what we do.
Or thing, if you change, then I'll change the way I think about you.
Right.
Right. And that's most of the time what we're doing in relationship, whether it's romantic or otherwise. We're saying, if you would fix yourself, if you would do something different, then I would do something different. It cannot be that way. And then you're at the mercy of someone else to do something to change your experience.
Yep. Right. And so it will be as you believe. When you pray for prosperity, your faith does not magically create bags of gold at your feet. This is not the way of divine law. Actually, your faith has already been involved in your condition, as with the turned down rheostat. You may have been believing in lack, and thus you have experienced lack. As you recenter your thought in the awareness of abundance, you turn up the rheostat, as it were, and become more synchronized with the process of eternal substance, which then flows forth in your experience in perfectly natural ways. Increases in salary, higher investment in returns, and other improvements. I love that. I love that he says this here. And here's where I'm saying the mental work is the work. That was my note to myself. But perfectly natural ways. Mm-hmm. The good that you seek is not going to come from, it's not going to be some angel descending down from heaven or some burning bush or any of that stuff. Perfectly natural ways. It's responding to your own thought.
Right. If you're waiting on the burn, it's one thing if you have an experience that awakens your consciousness, that some people call the burning bush. But if you're waiting on that experience, you'll be waiting a long time.
Right.
Right. You're creating your reality. You're creating your experiences by what you believe. Nothing wrong with those transcendent moments until we realize that we're always in the transcendent, right? That's what those help us realize.
Yep. And so we go on. Abundance is an ever-present reality. This fundamental truth is a base on which all prosperity programs must build. Financial stringency of any kind is likened to the flat world. It is where you are in consciousness, but there is abundance for you right where you are, even as there is a round world within the flat world. The one simply transcends the other. We skip that example where he uses the round and the flat world. But this is what transcendental means. We are not talking about two different worlds, but about two ways in which you perceive and lay hold of the one world. The world in which you have lack and unemployment and hardship, and the world of ever-present limitless substance. Right? And this reminds me, we will share this sermon. It reminds me of the allegory of Adam and Eve. In the Well Not Woke series last year, the sermon Adam Lives in Theory, right? This is what this is talking about. That allegory of Adam and Eve, 2 trees, 1 garden, right? We always have a choice between the tree of life, which is like understanding that the world is round and what that would mean, or the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the tree of duality, which is the tree of opposites. Sometimes things are good, sometimes they're not. And life seems random, right? And so we always have this opportunity when we understand that it's how we're relating to the world that creates our experience of the world. We have the opportunity to eat from the tree of life, which is for the healing of the nations, or eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which leads to what led to in the story, the allegory, the myth, the story of Adam and Eve, where then they were cursed, right? Life got really hard. Y'all remember what happened? They got kicked out of the garden. They got kicked out of eternal abundance. The garden was a symbol of absolute abundance, right? And when they got kicked out, what happened? They had to work and toil. When they got kicked out, then all of a sudden there was all this pain. When they ate of that tree, then there was shame, right? They hid from themselves. They hid from God. God asked a profound question. Who told you you were naked? Which means God was not seeing them as they saw themselves. But God said in the story, because you see yourself that way, you can't live in abundance anymore.
Right.
You can't live. There's no way for you to live in this place if that's how you see yourself.
And that's how you believe, right? Your world has to reflect that.
Oh my goodness. If you're ashamed, if you're living in shame and guilt and fear and worry and down on, you can't live in Eden because that doesn't work here in Eden.
2 different frequencies.
It's also interesting. I believe I said in that sermon, the instruction was only to not eat of that tree. There was no instruction to not eat of the tree of life. They could have done that. Because the tree of life is this way of seeing, is this way of being. The tree of life is the tree of faith, the tree of positive faith. Right?
And if we bring it back to this understanding of choice, it never even really says that it says that there was a fall, that they went to sleep. It never says that they woke up, because we haven't trained ourselves to know that we have this choice now. The choice that originally was played out in this experience, we now have the ability to make it again.
Yep. Absolutely.
Again and again and again. Where am I focusing? What tree am I going to eat of? And it had nothing to do with Eve and her apple.
Right. And that's the thing, and I share that in the sermon, that, you know, Adam and Eve are us, right? They live, that's that idea. Adam lives in theory. Adam lives in theory because Adam lives in us. Eve lives in theory because Eve lives in us. And one of the things I said in that sermon, I said, where in the hell was Adam? When you understand that if Adam is the protector and provider, and the director and the guider, that sense of our consciousness, and Eve represented the subconscious, which our subconscious is always receiving. Right. So when we're not consciously directing our faith, something else is. Yep. The news is, whatever the government decides to do or doesn't decide to do. Right. All of those things direct our subconscious. And so what was happening, the only reason that the feminine was used in that story was because it represented our subconscious, which is always receiving. And so that's why Eve ate of the apple. But I get pissed off when I think about that story, because what it shows us is what happens when Adam is not on the scene. When we do not have someone standing guard at the gateway of our mind, yep, speaking back to that foolish serpent, that foolish snake, convincing us to do something which was true. You won't die, right? It was true, but it wasn't beneficial.
Right.
Right. So we will reshare that sermon, and I'll make sure that we stream that out this week. Because it's important as it relates to this. And as you want to think about, what are the ways in which I'm misguiding and misdirecting my faith, and allowing the information or the suggestion of something outside of me to point me in a direction that doesn't benefit me. So he goes on, if you have been believing in darkness, the drapes are tightly closed. And you have been experiencing darkness in your room. As you recenter your awareness in positive faith, you open the window to the light of truth. And it is as Isaiah suggests, behold, my servant shall prosper. She or he shall be lifted up and shall be very high. Okay. Now, this next section was interesting to me because we literally just did a sermon on this a few weeks ago, the last Sunday in March, in that sermon, Living Forward, which was the last of the series of Working with the Law, You Better Work, right? I talked about the power of I can, right? And how we must use that's what's going to support us in terms of the law of success. And so Eric Butterworth is echoing so many of these same ideas. The most widespread disease of our time may well be I can't-itis. It is contracted by many of us early in life from our elders. Mm-hmm. Society has made a song of it that has neither rhyme nor reason, but it may be heard everywhere. I can't because I'm poor. I can't because I'm sick. I can't because I do not have, it doesn't even feel good to read these out loud.
No, it doesn't.
I can't because there is no opportunity. I can't because I am too old. I can't, right? Few persons use more than a small part of the tremendous God power within. You can alter the pattern of harping on the same old I can't tune. Actually, there can be no progress in the realization of prosperity until you do so. It calls for knowing. Really knowing that you are a spiritual being living in a limitless spiritual universe endowed with the whole potential energy flow of the universe. And so again, when we're talking about doing, right, it's a knowing is what we're doing. Go ahead.
And in that next sentence, in most cases, the problem is faulty self-evaluation. So not only do we have a faulty idea of God, we have a faulty idea about ourselves, right, that we're operating from, that we're seeing through.
Because think about it. We can't see, if God is the highest reality, whatever you see that thing is, your concept of you can never go beyond that, right? It's so interesting when we think about this, right? That because we have this idea of God as being judgmental and getting angry and all of that. And so then, of course, we allow ourselves to be the same way in that sense and feel justified. But if you have this minuscule menial expression of God or a concept of God, then that means at a varying level, your concept can only be as high as that of self. And so this is another reason why we must expand our God concept, right? Because I'm so grateful and thankful, this universal nature of God, this unconditional nature of God, this all-pervasive nature of God. When we go back to Dr. H.L. Acadian, the Lessons in Truth, that God is love, not just loving, but love itself. God is power, not just powerful, right? God is wisdom and intelligence, not just wise or intelligent. Then that means that I am one with and have access to all wisdom and intelligence. So whenever I'm in the situation of a problem, I know that answers are here right now and they're flowing to me. See, because my concept of God is so wide, it's so big, it's so high, it's so expansive that I have access to wisdom and intelligence no matter what the problem is. I'm not worried about what the problem is. There are problems and challenges that I will encounter in my life from this point to the day I leave this planet, but I'm not worried about them because I recognize that wisdom and intelligence is right here with me now. I'm one with the problem solver. I'm one with the solution, right? This is why I can love anybody in any situation, and it's been proven in my life because I understand that God is love. This was the wisdom of the teaching of love, what Dr. Martin Luther King was admonishing us to understand in his ministry, and why it was so misunderstood, because people were still viewing it from the human lens, and their God concept was so small. So they couldn't understand that love could be this pervasive, this expansive, and ultimately healing, and ultimately transformative. But God is love. And so I recognize, there are situations in my humanness, in my human intellect. I don't know how I can love under that circumstance or love somebody or forgive somebody. Of course, in my humanness, I can't. But I recognize but my God concept is bigger than that. And so that's what I tap into. That's what I lean into. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So much goodness here. What time is it?
Wow. We still got some time. All right. So, I want to give you, because that sentence, when I read that sentence, I said, I think that sentence is actually an awesome affirmation. There are two affirmations that we get right in this section. But the first one, I'm just going to move forward. I wanted to give y'all some definitions too. This one, I am a spiritual being living in a limitless spiritual universe endowed with the whole potential energy flow of the universe. Right? Because he says if we get that idea, then we're operating in absolute faith. So affirm this, write this down, put this somewhere, screenshot this, whatever you need to do. Now, the other thing, as he's talking about this idea of getting rid of I can't, then we can use this affirmation. I can because I am. But see, that I am is your God name. I am is God. Right? And so if your concept of I am is small, right, then you can say I can because I am, but then you would hit the ceiling of whatever your concept of I am is. You would run into the wall of your concept of what I am is. All right, I'm looking at time. I don't know where we can, let's see, let's dig in a little bit more to the text. I'm just going to move forward because we just did that affirmation. The important thing is that a need. Yes. This is important. So he says, I'm going to start at the top of this paragraph. Of course, you do live in the world of change, and you may well have occasional pressing needs. The insight of truth should not cause you to refuse to admit having them. The important thing is that a need has no built-in limitations. There are only limiting thoughts about it. And this is important because I think sometimes as we get into metaphysics and we're affirming and blah, 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 it's like, I don't need anything. I don't want to say I need, right? No, of course you have need of things, right? But what's important is the important thing is that a need has no built-in limitations. There are only limiting thoughts about it. So we need to come to an understanding is like, what am I thinking about my need? It's like,
I need. What meaning have I given my need?
Right. I need. I can't remember. What do we need? $4,000, $5,000 by the end of the week. That was a need. That was a real need. This was early in our first year at CSC. Right. And we needed it by the end of that week. Right.
It was that day.
Well, I mean, it was a whole week, going by, but days had gone by now and we still had the need. Right. And we needed it on that Friday. And we were operating in faith. We were operating in believing. Now, we weren't pretending like we didn't have the need. All things are provided. We have no needs. We brought our leadership team together. We talked about what we needed. We talked about our plan for what would need to happen if we aren't able to meet that need, right? And we stayed firm in the faith and in the knowing. So that particular day, PY and I, we had been praying every day. consistently. Why? Because we needed to pray not to convince God, not begging God, not trying to manipulate God, but we recognized that we needed to keep ourselves in the space and place of absolute faith and expectancy. So we prayed from the answer. We prayed knowing that we are already provided for. We prayed knowing that CSC would continue to thrive. We prayed knowing that CSC would be here 7 years from that time, as we are right now. And so we prayed and we released it. We let it go. We went on to something else. We had to work on some marketing materials. So that's what we were doing. And as we were working on the marketing materials, a pop-up comes on the phone, a PayPal donation for exactly the amount that we needed. Right? So please hear us. We're not saying that there won't be needs or that you should ignore needs or act like you don't have needs. But what we are saying is what you think about the need. That's what you must become aware of, right? Because do you think your need has built-in limitations?
Or have you only allowed yourself to have so much?
Right.
I only need this little bit. I just need to make it to the end of the week. I just need to make it to payday, right? And if that's the way that you've been believing and thinking, you'll have a make it mentality and a make it experience. I got to make it till, right?
And so you can use the first line from the Unity Prayer of Faith. When you have a need, God is my help in every need. That's why that's the first line in the Unity Prayer of Faith. There's a recognition of need, but I recognize that there's no limits because God, my all expanded God concept is my help in every need. Right? And so that's where I move forward to.
Meaning that it will, because it's that expanded awareness, it's infinite intelligence. I tap into that and it directs my thought and my steps toward whatever action I have to take.
Yeah. So all things are possible to God and to you in God consciousness, right? So what's possible to you is based on your God consciousness. Right where you are in your present level of development, there is a limitless resource of wisdom and guidance, of ability and creativity, and of substance and supply through which you can do and do superlatively well all that needs to be done if you can let go of limited self-identifications, if you can believe. And this was another word for us today. The word developed is interesting. Develop, it is interesting in that it does not mean adding to or putting on something. It is related to the word envelop, which means to enclose. Thus, to develop or develop means to unfold. This is what we're constantly doing, unfold or revealing. Many of you know the song, and I think it's on YouTube, Reveal. That was how I got to that song. I was meditating on that idea of unfolding. And I said, unfolding is like revealing. When I open up an envelope, a letter, I receive a letter, I open up the envelope, right? I unfold it, right? I reveal its contents. And so then that's where Spirit began to drop those words and reveal your greatest life, right? If you are alive, your dream has not died. Reveal your greatest life. And so he goes on, developing a prosperity consciousness is not achieved by programming the mind with an array of pat statements of truth. Hear this, y'all, right? There's a reason that we use affirmations and repetition, but you are rich, not because you decree it over and over, but by reason of your spiritual inheritance. You are now as spiritual as you can ever be. We talked about the muscles. We talked about the muscles. You wouldn't get new muscles if you were going to work out, and you want to get nice and strong and get this amazing build. You don't get new muscles. You develop the muscles you develop the muscles you already have, right? You are now as spiritual as you can ever be. You may increase your awareness of your true nature, which will in turn increase your flow of substance. You will not get prosperity out of a book, this one or any other, right? Prosperity comes from consciousness, which unfolds or develops from within. This is powerful. It's a powerful understanding. So then we understand we can make use of prosperity statements, right? We do this in our 4T prosperity program, right? Where we make use of an affirmation daily of I am prosperous, right? But we're doing that along with this entire process of unfolding and developing a consciousness, right? Not trying to get something that we're not already, but developing what we already possess.
So the affirmation becomes a tool to aid in our development of our consciousness. it's not the magic bullet. It becomes a tool that we use to develop and unfold and reveal the truth that is always there.
Now, looking at the time, wow, it's already 12:30. We're going to keep going because there's if we don't talk about anything, well, there's, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 things. There's a couple things.
If you have to leave, please feel free and come back later.
You have the information for giving. You can go to our website, Give What Feels Good. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but
yeah,
we want to stay. We want to stay
in this.
All right. So, in this section, occasionally a student of truth will say, I have worked so very long and hard to develop understanding. How long do I have to work at it until I arrive at the place where it just automatically works for me? The thought is so understandable, yet so naive. Ask the great athlete or the concert pianist or the successful actor if they have arrived at the place where they need no further practice. They will tell you that the higher you climb in proficiency and public acceptance, the greater the need for practice. You will note that even Jesus went regularly up into the mountain to pray, to practice the presence of God. This is so incredibly important, right? There's no arrived. We say this, I don't know if y'all really know it or really believe it, like PY and I practice. We are constantly developing our consciousness. We are reading and we are studying, yes, because we're teachers, but we're reading and studying because we are humans here in this incarnation seeking to express love, seeking to express God, and seeking to express more of this consciousness of prosperity.
Right. We don't beat ourselves up because we practice. We realize that practice is helping us in understanding, experiencing more of the limitless nature of this God thing. Right? We're not getting to the end, right?
Right. And so this is one of the things that's beautiful. I love that he used the example of the athlete or concert pianist. This is one of the things that it has been so beautifully celebrated and articulated about Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality. What that's all about is right here, right? They will tell you that the higher you climb in proficiency and public acceptance, the greater need for practice. If you haven't watched it, shout out to our basketball fans. The Last Dance, we've been watching the documentary. I think there's 2 new episodes tonight, chronicling Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And they outline it so very clearly. The larger he became, the more he practiced. And even after he had already received so many accolades and was considered the greatest, to ever play, and Air Jordan and all of the things that he had become, he actually then, when they lost in the playoffs to Detroit the second time, they made a commitment. They spent the whole summer training. He decided to bulk up. He needed to get stronger. All of these things we see over and over again. It's one of the attributes of greatness. Now, there's another term here right at the end. He says that Jesus went regularly up to the mountains to pray, to practice the presence of God. And we've heard Eric Butterworth use that. And I want to support you all in understanding a little bit more what that's about. There is a sermon. It was from the series we did on the Book of Psalms, and we'll stream this one out. Actually, I think we already scheduled it for today. It's called How to Get Back Home. And in there, I go back to Lessons in Truth from Dr. H. Lily Cady, which is what Eric Butterworth is referencing here, to her chapter on practicing the presence. And she gives us a 3-step formula that we must withdraw, we must affirm, and we must be still. And it's really a meditative process. It's something that you can use to develop your daily spiritual practice in that sitting in the silence. This is incredibly important because, again, what we're talking about is an inner knowing that must be developed, right? Nobody can give this to you. We can continue to lead you to it. We continue to point you to it, but we can't give it to you, right? And so what these times of contemplation, this is what Transcendental meditation supports us in doing, is dipping in and bringing more of that out with us, right? We're anchored and we're tethered to something that is transcendent and beyond the external world, which then supports us, right? Maharishi calls that nature support, or the full support of nature. We start to have, beautiful and wonderful experiences in life, right? And so I'm going to skip ahead because we got to talk about this. We talked about development, right? Practice identifying yourself as a limitless expression of God. But there's this other piece that he talks about. I don't know if y'all notice, Eric Butterworth gets a little shady sometimes.
Yeah, he gets a little shady about some new thought,
some things, right.
Or teachers, or trends, or fads in these teachings, and we love him for that. No, he does get shady, though.
Right. He keeps it real.
He keeps it real.
He keeps it real. And I think this is it here. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is it. And this is important as we're thinking about prosperity. We've taught about prosperity in the last Reimagine the Bible series last year. I particularly called out and talked about prosperity gospel as it's practiced around the world, but also as it's even practiced within New Thought. And so Eric Butterworth writes this. This is the highlight in blue. Unfortunately, some New Thought teachings of prosperity have been centered not in wholeness and spiritual well-being, which he says that's really what prosperity is, spiritual well-being, but in the crassest sense of materiality. This is not what we're talking about. This is not what we're teaching. The all things are possible promise is met with the covetous gleam of dollar signs in the eyes. Techniques are offered by which to treat or work the principles for the high-powered job, the luxurious country home, the expensive foreign car. Just treat for it and you will get it. One woman recently said, God wants me to wear sable. After all, I'm a child of the king. It is a common materialistic rationalization. Now, I know you've heard this. And for me, growing up in traditional Christianity, this was an idea, right? I'm a child of the king. I'm a child of God. So I'm supposed to drive this car. I'm supposed to have this thing. At its excess, we see that with many ministers and teachers, right? But Butterworth goes on and he says, the fact is, God does not want you to wear sable. God wants you to be stable. Lord have mercy.
Stop right there. Hammond B3 cued.
The impetus, thing-oriented desire for sable may come from a sense of personal inadequacy, a lack of spiritual stability. This is why I encourage everyone to tap into what is your thing under the thing. This takes us back to last week while we talked about the consciousness behind vision boards. We move from vision boards to I am maps because many times the stuff that we want is because we think it's going to fill the sense of inadequacy, the holes that we have, the things that we haven't healed, the self-image, the lack of worth and self-worth, the unworthiness that we're living in, swimming in, sometimes drowning in. And so if I get this car, if I get this beautiful person in my life, if I get this job, if I get these commas and things behind my name, if I get that degree, then I will feel and be tapped into this truth of I'm prosperous. Not so, right? And so it's important for us to tap into this. It's not that the things are a
Nothing
problem.
wrong with them.
The creative process seeks to express in you as a stable, well-balanced, prosperous person. But prosperity, you see, is spiritual well-being. This is not to say that you cannot have fine things, for you can. We love fine things. I think y'all know that, right? And you should. When you have a balanced consciousness centered in the ever-present substance of God, the things will come easily as they are needed.
And you might not even be motivated by the thing that you think you needed. Right? If that thing is coming from a lack mentality, if that thing is coming from I'm not enough, if that thing is coming from I'm not the perfection of God, then it won't feel that anyway. You'll keep searching, you'll keep looking, you'll keep wanting to acquire more, as opposed to knowing that you are the more.
Absolutely. And so he goes on, the first step should not be to treat or to pray or to affirm for things, but get centered in the divine flow. What did we say? What is faith? Faith is a consciousness centered in universal substance, centered in the divine flow. God knows nothing of cars or jobs or fur coats or country homes. God is substance. And this substance will flow forth in your life in keeping with your consciousness of wholeness.
Right. And this substance has to outpicture in this world as something. So we're not saying you can't have those things.
Exactly.
But we're saying you're operating from the substance. Right? You're operating from stability.
There's so much good here. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I do want to tap into one of the last things he says, because I recognize this could come up as a question. It's a question that we've seen, we've gotten in classes before. I don't see it where he says God is principle. Well, I'll just talk about it because I don't see that particular passage, and we may have skipped it. But he says that. He said that God is principle. right? And I think it's important for us to understand what do we mean by what is meant by principle, and that's all about. So I'm gonna go back to my definitions. Here we go. Principle. So principle is the fundamental source or base of something, right? Now this is important. Think about this, and I don't know if y'all experience this, but I'm thinking about my grandma today. And one thing she used to do. Now my grandmother, of course, was an amazing cook. People all around the country loved her food, but I'm thinking about when she would make punch. She had some special punches that she would make, or even when she would make lemonade or iced tea. She used to have this really big pitcher that you couldn't drink out of. Now, why? She would make it, but there was this one pitcher you couldn't touch because that pitcher was the concentrate. That pitcher was sweeter than sweet, right? That pitcher ain't had no ice in it. But see, what she could do, she would take that pitcher and pour it in a smaller pitcher or in the punch bowl and would cut it, right, with ginger ale or something else. Y'all know about sherbet. That, right? Right. She would cut it with water or ginger ale. And that big pitcher would stretch and last longer. See, God is concentrate. So when we think about the fundamental source or the basis of something, this is how we have to understand who and what God is. And then we make use of the concentrate, right? And what's beautiful, because it's concentrated and because it can be multiplied again, because you can add something to it and all of its qualities are there and we all enjoy it. And you can use it the next day and the next day and the next day. That's how we get to use substance. So if you think about God in that way, God is unlimited concentrate, right? Again, all of these analogies, all of these metaphors, all of these symbolic ways of looking at it are limited because I'm talking about something that's limited, right? Grandma's concentrate would eventually run out. But this is what the idea of substance is. So when we're thinking about God as principle, God is principle. It's an unlimited substance. It's concentrate that then we make use of, right? And so that adding to would be like our using our faith. Right? It would be like our turning the dial. It would be like our opening the drapes, right? And then you have something that you can enjoy, something that's delicious, right? So it's important for us to understand that because, we hear that line. I remember what brought it up to me. I remember someone asking us in class if we could explain, because we would talk often about law and principle, which are interchangeable in the sense of what we're learning and what we're studying is the fundamental source or basis, which is God. God is law, God is principle. And here's the thing. Law is love, principle is love. Right? So underneath all of that, we're talking about an expression of love. Right? It's unconditional because love is unconditional. Right? If it was conditional, it would then be judging. See, this is why we say, I just want to make sure I'm explaining this because this is why we say things like that. Well, why would it be unconditional? Right? And why is love unconditional? Because if love was conditional, then love would judge.
And it wouldn't be love.
It can't be love at that point if it's judging, right? That's because it's then conditional, right? If you act this way, I love you. If you say this, I love you, right? If you dress this way, I love you. That's conditional. That's not love, right? This is why that mystical passage from Corinthians is so powerful, right? And love is patient. Love is kind. Love holds no record of wrongs. Love never fails, or love never exhausts itself. It's my favorite translation of that last line, right? So we're gonna have to wrap things up.
This is good, y'all.
My goodness. So we will be moving forward this week. Please read and reread chapter 5, which is all about gratitude, a grateful heart, which is awesome because there's so many things to talk about as it relates to gratitude and an understanding and a misunderstanding of gratitude. Gratitude is not for God. We don't thank God for anything. God doesn't need our gratitude or our praise or our thanksgiving or our worship.
That would make it capricious.
Yep.
And moody and sometimey.
Yep. So in this moment, it is time for giving. The information is here on the screen. As we always say, find your joy number. Now, we know that there are many people that You may be experiencing financial difficulty right now. Your finances may have shifted in a significant way. And so please do not try to give what you think you should give or what you would have given if you still were making X number of dollars a month, a week, or a year. But give that amount that just feels good, that you just feel joyful about, and you don't think about it, right? You give it now. You're not thinking about it tomorrow or next week, or when you're trying to buy lunch and you're like, I shouldn't have given that money to CSC. That's not the number, y'all. That's
right.
not
We
the
want
number.
you to eat.
Yes, yes. Right. For those that are able and those that are willing, you can also, when you go to the website, which you again see here on the screen, you can set up a recurring donation. That's something that I've done recently because it just makes it easier for me. And I know that I'm always getting my donation in every week. You can also text to give. 347-744-9500. The minimum is $10 for text to give because of the fees that are related to that. And so when we give from this joy number, because this joy number, then we're giving from the all that is. We're giving from the more than enough. When we give from that place, then we can affirm this powerful truth. All the money that I use
returns
to me multiplied. In a never-ending cycle. Of increase. And enjoyment. And so with that, we love you. We bless you. Bless means to confer prosperity upon you. And we see you as prosperous. We see you as perfect, whole, and complete. Know that we are praying with you and praying for you. Again, as so many in our community and many people that will just find us here in this recording, we are mourning with you. We are grieving with you. We are holding you in consciousness as we can't hold you physically right now. But we know all that's going on and are holding you in our hearts and in our minds. We love y'all.
We love you.
All right.
And we look forward to seeing you again next Sunday.
Yes.
For the next chapter. It's going to be a good one.
Yep.
And we also look forward to being with you online on Wednesday morning for the prayer call.
Yes.
We love you so much.
All right, y'all.
Be
Have
well.
an amazing Sunday.
Bye for now.